Well, I'll start by saying that we've known each other for over 20 years because we sort of came up together in the same art scene in Brooklyn, New York, circa 1992, 3, 4, on forward.
Yes.
I saw Rico's first show, I think your first show ever. It was a two-person show at Momenta, right? And then he had another show, Momentart, which is no longer around. And then he had another show at a gallery called Pierogi, which was all of like 6 blocks away. And that gallery is still going strong. And then at some point, I'm figuring probably partly to humor me, Rico came down to a gallery I had, which was probably 10 blocks away from the other two, because everything was nice and tight back then. And, you know, I'm sure we wound up talking about this or that. I have no specific memory of what we talked about, but I do remember that we were simpatico and that I loved your work. And, you know, we had lots to sort of like spin tales about. Now, probably, again, 20 years later, you know, we have this opportunity to work together on the solo show. We sort of seeded this by including Rico's work in the Poor People's Art Show, which opened in January and basically ran the spring. Yeah, this is really sort of a unique opportunity for us to do the oeuvre, right? There's the earliest work here is from 2007.
2001.
2001, thank you. You're right. Yeah, you're absolutely right, which is a
Video.
video
Yeah.
back there that's on one of the monitors. And then, you know, we have work that basically runs from that period on to now, and the newest work, of course, which is in the gallery, which I won't say much more about because I want the reveal to sort of like happen properly. But that's obviously, you know, fresh enough for the paint to actually smell like paint.
Christian, can you mention the publication and
Yes, right. So
remarks as well?
there's an interview that Rico and I did together and a great essay that Mark Fredericks did for this publication, right? Which will be available, this is obviously a mock-up, which will be available in about 3 weeks, right? And free for anyone who basically comes into the museum. So we encourage you guys to come back and invite other people to sort of come in and obviously take the publication. We want it out there in the same way that we want news about this amazing exhibition sort of out there. So help us spread the word. We had a great radio interview this morning on Art in Your Ear, which if anyone wants to get on that website can hear. And was ABC Action News did something I think last week,
Yep.
which I just happened to see this morning because you found it, put it up on your Instagram, and it's actually fantastic. So if you get a chance, look at those things. But in the meantime, why don't we talk a little bit about Rico's work in Rico. So Rico is one of those sort of interesting cats that was actually really good at both sports and art, you know? And yeah, I mean, look.
I was okay.
You played-
I played sports.
You did. Well, you played
Football. Yeah.
where?
Oh, for the Dallas Cowboys? No, I'm
No,
joking. No, that's not true.
that would have been,
Scratch that.
that would have been a
Bethel-
tough double career to have.
I played in high school and I played
College,
4 years at Bethel College,
Yeah.
essentially.
Minnesota.
In
So that's,
Minnesota, yeah.
yeah, look, you played 4 years of, you know, college ball.
Division III.
That doesn't matter.
I was good for
It's,
at that level.
it's just still like several, you know, thousand people, man. Like it's, you
No,
know,
it was-
nothing to sniff at.
Very important.
Yeah.
Part
Well,
of it.
anyway, so, but you've always talked about the fact that like the discipline that you put into sports and that you learned from sports,
Yeah,
you basically have applied sort of to your art practice,
absolutely.
right? I mean, you know, I don't know why it's sort of like common wisdom that those things don't meet, but clearly they do, and not only in your case, but in cases of actual professors that you've had as well, in any event. So, you know, that's a real thing about sort of your biography and your work. And then from Bethel, you went to study at Yale,
Yes,
right?
got my MFA.
right?
Sculpture.
Correct. And then you went from Yale to Brooklyn,
Straight to Brooklyn.
straight to Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Brooklyn in the house. And, you know, you basically began to show, right? And
Yeah, right.
have the career that you've had.
Yeah, exactly.
Um,
I mean, there was a slope build to it, but I arrived in New York or Brooklyn at a time where, you know, it was like post the '87 crash, so like there was a lot of DIY or artist-run sort of situations, which is kind of
That's what it
all
was
of that
all
stuff
about. Yeah.
grew out of. And so there was a space that was started by some friends named Sauce, and that we put on shows and invited people the old-fashioned way, snail mail. Designed,
Cards, you remember
designed
cards?
an invitation on a very early Mac. My friend Lars, who's actually still doing retouch, but sent it out and waited for the people to come, and thinking of course nobody's gonna come, but we're shocked when we had a nice crowd, not unlike this. And so yeah, it was like, that was a really important thing to kind of be able to arrive in New York and start making shows. And I see that as like a really integral part of my development as a, artist coming to that city, and still shapes, how I process, what it is that I do, and what makes this field so appropriate.
Yeah, yeah, no,
that
totally.
we're like coming together, after knowing each other for a long time.
For a long time.
I just want to add one little
Shoot.
tidbit to,
Go.
our relationship, in that you were one of the first, because, through like I think it was a benefit, I can't remember specifically, it might have been a Momenta Art benefit
Yeah.
maybe, where I made a small sculpture
I still have
with
it.
flames, yeah. that
Yeah.
you
Well, my
purchased.
wife and I still have it, and my child is somewhere in here.
They're in here.
Uh.
But like that, that was like really, something that was like really small, but, very significant, so it's something that I don't take, that I take, with, great reverence.
And you were doing a lot of sculpture then, man.
Yeah.
And I think that's about the time when Freestyle happened, which was this landmark show at the Studio
2001.
Museum in 2001.
Yeah.
Obviously, a lot of heavy things happened in 2001. But then you went on from there. You showed around Feldman, right, which is a legendary gallery. Now you show with another legendary gallery, Miles McHenry, and then gobs of sort of like a long rosary of sort of like great museum shows. And I can't tell you how tickled we are to have you here and have your work here, and to have you push our sort of like boundaries and have us hopefully push your boundaries a little bit, in the sense that like we got what I think is really an amazing exhibition out of this relationship, Let's start talking maybe about the pieces in the lobby first. So there's a video back there that we've stopped, but when we basically turn everything back on again, you guys, I invite you to visit. I will say sort of quickly that there's a real relationship between the moving image work that Rico's been doing really for years, right? Together with sculpture and painting. There's a fractal quality to it, there's patterns. There's this thing that's sort of in the art world is called geometric abstraction or hard edge geometric abstraction. It's basically about the things I just said, color, patterning, right, for its own sake. But Rico's sort of like use of that vehicle, right, of that sort of artistic envelope also carries a lot of content, right? In the interview this morning, I was talking about like, those are generally two poles, right? The aesthetic pole and then the conceptual pole. But the thing about Rico's work is that sort of like it meets in that real sweet spot in the middle. So it's eye candy or sort of eye candy with content, right? And that works particularly sort of well. Rico, maybe let's talk about these pieces. What do you call these works, which basically have obviously these figures,
Yeah.
and then these radiating patterns?
Yeah, well, so this is a project, I like to refer to some of the things that I do is projects, because, which implies like a beginning and an eventual end. This project started in 2007. And, you know, it's not always easy to kind of sort of remember, like, you know, initial inspiration. But I think I started with a series of, so 2007, what was happening? I think the war was still going on in Iraq, and I was thinking a lot about, like, you know, being a relatively new father. I was thinking about, like, you know, the situation with, like, assault weapons and or conflict. And so I first started with sort of opposing two AK-47s, shooting like what at the time I thought I wanted to pose them and sort of have them shoot like prismatic colors, like rainbow colors, and so like the, you know, thus sort of you know, taking away whatever sort of obvious impact of the weapon that would occur, and trying to make it into something that was like, you know, light and bright and, you know, about, you know, in other words, shooting love, you know. So, you know, fast forward, that eventually evolved into thinking about like making portraits of significant persons of color, mostly, and sort of honoring like their cultural and artistic production, a kind of a celebration. So like the rays that were pointing and shooting became something that was about, you know, creating something that, like, you know, implies energy, you know, implies radiance, implies, you know, all of the things that I hope is experienced in sort of looking at these works. So, so that's 2007, and again, I started the project, and I had very sort of simple parameters for the project, which was that the person depicted had to have passed away, and that there would be colorful rays that were sort of an approximation of like, you know, a Pan-African palette, you know, but black was going to be the most consistent color, separating the colors, and that the figure would be small, black and white, you know. I was kind of thinking about this today after a talk, like that, and this wasn't like a conscious thought at the time, but like if you've ever watched that show Big Brother, whenever somebody's kicked out of the house, they turn the figure from color to black and white, so it implies this sort of transition. And and I wanted the rays to be larger than the figure, so that they're coming out, and so they imply like this power, this energy, you know.
Influence, maybe.
Influence, you know, but the limitations of the page sort of stop the rays, you know, at the edge of the page. And so there's like this part that, you know, is about expanding beyond the edge of the page, so the viewer has to sort of complete that, you know, for themselves visually. So, but then in 2017, which is 10 years from the beginning, I was given an opportunity to do a show at the Studio Museum in Harlem, and sort of working with them. I had never, I just called them maybe something really silly like radiating line drawings or something, but working with the curator there, Hallie Ringel, who I eventually worked with again last year at the Birmingham Museum when I did, at that point, the largest mural to date of the Reverend Fred Shuttlesworth, a very important civil rights, well, Reverend, obviously, pastor and civil rights leader in Birmingham. But Hallie, in collaboration, sort of proposed the title of Icon. And so I thought, like, that's way up there, but it eventually became, I eventually decided that I liked the title.
Yeah,
And so then from there on, they became like icons. Yeah, so, but that implies all the things that I don't need to explain to y'all, which is like, you know,
Christian iconography, right? And Byzantine icons, especially with the radiating bit and the halos, right? All that stuff.
yeah, it's a certain kind of spirituality.
Yeah, spirituality in general. Who, just for folks who don't know all these figures.
Yeah,
who are we
so,
looking at?
so Isaac Hayes, I'm gonna go to Bell Hooks, Fela Kuti, and Audre Lorde. And this is the jazz pianist. It's right there. Yeah. Thank you. Sorry, y'all. Sorry, Cecil Taylor.
Cecil Taylor, that's it. And then in the other room, we have another set of icon drawings. But again, I mean, you know, before we move into this other room, where we talk about what, you know, is in store for us in the other room, I want to sort of point out, like, how reduction and like simplicity is or even seeming simplicity is such a signature thing about sort of like Rico's work. It's work that holds a lot of ideas. You know, it's super capacious, you know, in that sense. But it's really just paper and a found image and colored pencils, man. I mean, that's basically the root of it. You know, it's a little like, and you are, all this work is very influenced by music and also sort of channels music outward. And we'll see a couple of cases of that in the next room, and in the video as well. But like basic music, a guitar, a piece of wood with strings, or a drum with a piece of leather sort of like stretched across it, what you wind up doing with those few elements, right? It can be magic, can be massive, right? And I think, again, in hitting that sweet spot between sort of like beauty and concept, you know, or content, you know, I think Rico does that like very few artists working today.
Well, I would say like the term that I think of is like economy of means.
Yes.
So that's something that I'm very actively thinking about when I'm making the work. In other words, that there doesn't have to be more than, you know, too much or more than you need.
Right.
So for me, like that's really important to think about, you know. And so that was the case with these. You know, they were like materials that I had readily available, like colored pencil, paper, you know, and you know, the images are all sourced from the internet. So you know, I have a printer.
Oh, yeah, that, right.
You know, but the point being is that, like, you know, like hopefully that there's a great impact from something, you know, that is not reductive, but like, again, like, you know, there's an economy, but there's also like, you know, and this is the term that I like to use, and maybe it's not going to seem appropriate as I'm talking so much, but a certain kind of humility.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
So
So,
speaking of humility,
yes,
let's move
let's keep moving.
into this room. I don't want to give too much away, except to say, well, some of it is printed here. I don't know if you want to go ahead and explain the piece, or you want me to say three things about it. You want to do it? All right, I'll do it. Right. So most of Rico's videos, the ones that are here, are it's found imagery, found footage, right? That he basically sort of re-scrambles and puts back together in mirrors, and as you'll see as you walk through the show. This one is different because he basically sort of sourced the footage himself. He shot the footage himself in Money, Mississippi. Why Money, Mississippi? Well, Money, Mississippi has a number of sort of has a long tragic history, but possibly one of its milestones is a national milestone and really a global milestone. And that was the assassination of Emmett Till in 1955, a poor 14-year-old kid from Chicago who supposedly whistled at a white woman and then was essentially lynched. Right? Though his killers were never brought to justice, in fact, they eluded justice for the rest of their lifetimes. It's a terrible story. It's also a story that because Emmett's mother, Mamie, had the bravery, had the courage and intelligence to demand that at the funeral the casket be opened so the world could see what had happened to her child, to this poor 14-year-old child, resonated globally henceforth. So Rico's take on this is really just sort of a being there,
Yeah, just being present.
being present, which helps us be present in
Yeah.
these sites. And in a way, sort of, I would say memorialize and commemorate. I think you would be happier with the idea of celebrate, you know.
No, it's a memorialization.
Yeah.
It's consistent with the works on paper. It's consistent with the painting, which is also a sort of a memorialization. You know, I had the opportunity to go on the, well, I'm from Georgia. I was born in Georgia, grew up in Southern California. So I sort of, I retain roots, you know, in the South, you know. So I was invited to go to Mississippi to do a residency in 2016. It's hard to remember things post COVID. Which sounds like a long time ago, and maybe it is at this point. But by this great New Yorker, also from Memphis, but had a farm in Water Valley, Mississippi, Mary Lapidus, and she was on the board of Art in General before they closed, and I met her through a great human, Barbara Lanahan, who had been at the Judd Foundation and who was eventually the executive director of the Children's Museum in New York. So, so Barbara introduced me to Mary. Mary started a residency after her brother passed. It was his farm. It was a tree farm, very large, beautiful property. She was inviting artists to come down and just sort of like do that thing that, you know, sometimes you get an opportunity to do when people are really generous in this specific way. So I very reluctantly went down. I remember like, it was a long time sort of developing, trying to figure out if I would go down, but then I relented and said, okay, I'll go. And she said, well, there's an opportunity to go to Sumner, Mississippi to visit the Emmett Till Interpretive Center, which was run by this guy, Patrick Weems, who's an amazing Mississippian and from the area, but it was actually the Emmett Till Interpretive Center for Reconciliation. And so, and that was open across the street from the courthouse where the trial was held, where, you know, J.W. Milam and Roy Bryant were acquitted for the murder of Emmett Till, okay? So I thought, like, there's no way in heck for all the children in the room that I want to go to Sumner, Mississippi, having looked at some of the history, but then I thought, well, you know, I got this opportunity, so I'll go down and visit. So I met Patrick, and that set forth this opportunity to do something, which I decided I try to make a film. But so given access to like these sites, you know, the store in Money, Mississippi, and it was like the barn where he was apparently beaten to death or killed, and then there was like the river where his body was thrown, cotton gin tied around his neck, and then the courthouse where the trial was held. So I just went and shot. I went as a witness, you know, I mean, so to speak. I went, you know, wanting to document and seeing what would happen. So, long story short, is I was also thinking, or listening, or very impacted by Alice Coltrane's album, Journey in Satchitananda, and so that was also on the brain. So this is how it sort of occurs sometimes with artists. It's not always like this fluid, organic situation, but it all came together in a way that made sense. Mind you, I spent a billion years prior making films about really tragic events in history. You know, trying to, again, sort of, what's the word? Heal the energy. So what you're about to see is like this attempt to try to heal that energy, which is like very, it's almost ridiculous to say that, but you know,
Shall we?
we'll watch.
totems to your right, right, if you're facing here, right? And this sort of amazing 88 by 16 foot mural of who?
Zora Neale Hurston,
Zora Neale Hurston.
important Floridian,
Exactly.
Eatonville, Florida.
Amazing novelist, sort of pioneer anthropologist, pioneer feminist, right? And Eatonville. Born in Alabama, went to live in Eatonville, which is, what, I think like about 45 minutes right from here? Somebody correct me because my Florida geography is not so great. I think so, it's near Orlando. So about 45 minutes as the crow flies. Among, or possibly the first incorporated black town in the country, 1887, right? So that's the history that we're sort of dealing with here, right? Again, Zora Neale Hurston, a figure that might not live in our memories. There might not have been a movie with her made, starring and funded and produced by Oprah, if it hadn't been for Alice Walker, who essentially sort of like resuscitated her career, you know, sometime in the, if I remember correctly, mid-1980s, right? So, you know, those relationships, that's, I don't even know if we mentioned the title of the show, that's visible time, right? You know, those are the sort of things that Rico's making visible here. Those are the cultural influences, the connections, right, that artists like him make and pull along in history for us to actually register and then sort of, you know, digest in our own way. You want to say something about the making of this thing? Because, I mean, we mentioned that a little earlier, because it was,
Yeah, well, I'll talk fast.
yeah.
So we can get moving. But, well, again, I had, you know, worked on a few murals prior. Of course, not this large. And
Did we mention the one, sorry, I didn't mean to.
Birmingham.
Yeah, I know, but the one on 67.
Yeah, I mean, I did a project in I believe it opened in 2019 for the Metropolitan Transit Authority, also known as the MTA, of 8 mosaic portraits at the 167th Street station in the Bronx. It is a permanent commission installation of 8 very important Americans. Audre Lorde, James Baldwin, Gil Scott Heron, Justice Sonia Sotomayor, Tito Puente, Celia Cruz, and Reggie Jackson. The great I got the rules, yeah. So those are 8 beautiful mosaics, 4 by 24 feet each, on the north and south side platform. So that's kind of precedent, you know. And then I got an opportunity to do a mural at Amherst College, and then like getting one, but then Birmingham, working with my wonderful assistant Marta, who we work in the studio together making the paintings. But then this was the second opportunity that I had to work with students. So as mentioned, there were 35 students that applied, 5 amazing students that, you know, were selected. And so we set about to make the mural, which is essentially comprises, long story short, comprises a lot of tape. And I bring up the brilliant assistant again because we got here and we looked at the wall and we said, wow, that's a big wall. And that's a little bit bigger than the last wall we worked on, where we were able to sort of, you know, extend the lines by drawing them with what we projected, established the marks for each line, the layout, and then we extended it with the long ruler that we worked on together. And it was a beautiful dance in Birmingham that we did. But then we got here and we got through the first 2 lines. We thought there's no way in HECK we're going to be able to do that all the way up. folks here we had a scissor lift, and then we had a laser, which is like a new addition to mural making and made all the difference. But the great assistant determined, because lasers go X, Y, that you can flip it at an angle and extend it up and position it properly and draw the angles. And I was like, that ain't gonna work. But it worked. And so we just did that. So that eliminated the drawing and then taping. So we just taped. And so we did that, and we didn't know what these amazing students would do insofar as what their skill set was. We assumed they were great painters, but suffice to say they came in and they painted really well. I said, my only rule is pay close attention and no drips. Of course, I'm the first one that drips. So I think we had like 3 drips. So out of the entire time, they painted really well. They painted very conscientiously, and I say that more than them learning from me, I learned a lot from them. I learned that I could do this with a great group of people, and it can work in a magical way. So yeah, that's it.
Great, that's fantastic. So, you know, with those details about the dance, right? The extended dance, the week-long dance, the choreography you guys managed together. I told you we had a couple of treats. This is clearly one of them. The other treat that we had was over here to the left. This is soul therapy. Because you guys sing, well, you sing in lots of places, but you sing in churches. You know, that's particularly apropos for when you do it there, but you know, otherwise, it's particularly apropos for what we're doing here for this show. And I can't thank you guys enough for being here. I was just informed that you guys are also USF graduates, which is fabulous. Yes, please, thank you. And I want to introduce them. They're going to play a couple of numbers for us. You got Willie Green, band leader and keyboardist. Vanessa Law, lead vocalist. Danielle Green, vocalist. Xavier Birch, lead guitarist. Where are you, Xavier? There you are. Wesley Green, sound engineer, and I'm missing the drummer's name. In your name. Wesley. Oh, that's Wesley. Sorry, man. All right, we got everybody? And Willie Green. There you go. There you go. So please, put your hands together for Soul Therapy.
Walk with me, Lord. Walk with me. Walk with me, Lord.
happy, and we do appreciate the invitation and the opportunity to be here and be a part, to be able to celebrate Mr. Rico Gasson and this wonderful exhibition that is here. And so we're going to do this last song, and it's a oldie but goodie. Anybody know about Sam Cooke? You got to think kind of back. You got to think back a little bit to know about Sam Cooke. But as we look at all of the African American icons, I just believe that as Sam Cooke was writing this song and singing this song and recording it, that a change is going to come. That he knew that where he was during that time would not be where we are today, and that progress would take place. And we can see all of that with the wonderful artwork all around the exhibit.